After years of going unregulated, the state and counties are cracking down on illegal vacation rentals. The latest proposal to limit and manage short-term rentals on Oahu is the strictest yet. Supporters say it will keep tourists from overtaking residential neighborhoods, but rental operators and travel groups argue it could hurt their business. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise. Over the past decade, the number of illegal vacation rentals has skyrocketed on Oahu. Residents in areas like Kailua and the North Shore suddenly had tourists next door, and with ineffective regulation, their outcries grew too loud to ignore. In an effort to address the issue, the Blangiardi administration has pitched an aggressive plan to reel in the industry, saying that short-term rentals are disruptive to the character and fabric of residential neighborhoods. Legal operators of rental units argue the proposed rules only benefit hotels and could kill their income. Bill 41 passed the first reading at the Honolulu City Council last week, but the fight isn't over. We'll hear from both sides of the issue tonight. We look forward to your participation in our show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guests. Dean Uchida is the director of the City and County of Honolulu's Department of Planning and Permitting. The agency provides a number of services, including information and issuing of building permits, development projects, residential code enforcement, and implementing long-range planning programs for the city. Brandon Elefante was elected to the Honolulu City Council in 2014 and is currently in his second term. He represents District 8, which includes Pearl Ridge, Pearl City, Waipio Gentry, and Waipahu. He's the chair of the Council's Committee on Zoning and Planning. Kelly Lee was raised in Makakilo and is a licensed realtor. She's also a board member with the Oahu Short-Term Rental Alliance. The organization is comprised of a group of short-term rental hosts, managers, and other service providers. And Larry Bartley has called Oahu home for more than 4 decades after first arriving here to attend UH Manoa. He co-founded the volunteer group Save Oahu's Neighborhoods in 2005 as a way to push for stricter enforcement of illegal rentals. Thank you all for being here tonight. We look forward to this discussion. We know there's a lot of passion on this one. Dean, I want to start with you. It was just 2 years ago that the city passed a law that was supposed to crack down on illegal vacation rentals. Has there been enough time to see if that law actually would work?
Well, when Blangiardi administration first came in, that was one of the things we looked at. We had a hearing trying to go through the rulemaking process or getting more input. And we began looking at the details of the bill and found that there's sections of it that were kind of questionable as far as how we could enforce. That's why we took a deep dive and started to look at what amendments could be made to make it a little bit easier to enforce and maybe tighten up some of the activities in the residential area. Coming in after COVID, I think we began to notice what neighborhoods were like without short-term vacation rentals in them. And I think that was a driving force behind what we were trying to do by getting them out of the residential communities and kind of focusing them around the resort areas.
And when you look at the previous bill and this one, what is the biggest difference? For folks who haven't been tracking this issue closely, what does this one do that the other did not?
This one, the other one, the prior bill allowed for so many, a number of vacation rentals in different communities based on the development plans for those areas. So you weren't putting a limit on the number of vacation rentals in the residential communities. And it pretty much didn't regulate things in the resort areas. So we've basically put a cap on the residential communities and providing more regulations in the resort areas under this bill.
Kelly, what are your concerns about this bill?
With Bill 41, the biggest concern is what seems to be a complete ban of short-term rentals. And there are short-term rentals that benefit the community in several ways. This bill can turn what was legal illegal. And that's the concern of people who do rent short-term or anywhere from 30 days to a year, that it could disrupt their livelihood. And that's our biggest concern, is it's already kind of unaffordable to live here. And sometimes people need to buy an extra property so that they can rent it out. And either for retirement or for their kids. And I think that the biggest concern is that there is a need for short-term rentals, not just vacation rentals, but family members or graduations or people who are remote working. They can't stay in a hotel for 60 days or 90 days. And there's a concern that the people who do own them it's gonna upend their lives financially.
Brandon, the council passed this on first reading 7-2. Why did you vote in favor of this?
Yeah, thank you, Yunji, and to PBS Hawaii for hosting this forum. I think this is a very important topic, for the public. So the council did pass Bill 41 on first reading, recognizing that there are a lot of issues that we do need to address and fix from what was transmitted over from the Planning Commission. Today at the Zoning and Planning Committee, we approve DPP's recommendation, Department of Planning and Permitting, on the extension of time for 120 days to give more time to consider Bill 41. And so it was a big step. So if we don't approve the extension of time, then the bill dies. So it's an important critical component to keep the discussion alive and having this discussion here today.
What do you hope happens in those 120 days? What more do you need to learn about this before it has final passage?
Yeah, so I have some flashbacks from when Bill 89, came before the council. I would never imagine that I would take short-term rentals twice in my term in the council. But it is the priority of the Blangiardi administration that wants to really hone in on short-term vacation rentals. So what I would like to do as the chair of the Zoning and Planning is really here and take a deep dive and research the issues, what Planning Commission transmitted over, to seeing how different it is from our current ordinance, see what we can do from DPP's recommendation, to hearing from Kelly as well as Larry and other stakeholders to come in and join the conversation. And hopefully we can get a bill that's a compromise. Not everyone will be happy with it. I think that's just how politics and public policy works. But I think at the end of the day, we do need better enforcement as one key component of it, but we have to also be fair.
Larry, what about Kelly's point that there are people who feel like the 6-month requirement is too arduous?
It's a law on Maui and Kauai. It seems to work there. I'm not sure about the Big Island. And it fits the state's definition of short-term rentals or transient accommodations, which is 180 days. That's where the TAT comes in. So it kind of streamlines it in line with other jurisdictions and also with the state's definition. So answering her question about, or her point about where can people stay, there are, we're looking for exemptions or exceptions for working people and so forth who come in, which will be handled by the DPP in affidavit form or something like that. So the important point about the 180 days is that they can no longer go out with these fake 30-day contracts and lure people in 12 times a year and then take that house out of the housing market. If they have to advertise for 180 days, their market's going to dry up. In other words, they're not going to get the tourism market. So there, Air DNA says there are over 10,000 vacation rentals on Oahu right now. Latest data. 70%, HTA, that's Hawaii Tourism Authority, says 70% of those are owned by non-residents. They're investments for money. And they are taking those houses out of the housing market. And that's our biggest issue. Two things, housing and neighborhood tranquility or neighborhood life in the neighborhoods. And people kind of overlook the apartments because this is just as big in apartment buildings too. And there are thousands and thousands of condos and apartment buildings which are being impacted by these illegal rentals. And our hats off to the DPP. They're doing what they can, but they just don't have the tools, and people are willing to cheat and lie about their contracts and so forth, then they really can't overcome that. If the Corporation Council doesn't back them up, and it says, if it's like if he's an administrator, you got to take your assets and your what you have to work with and apply it in the most effective manner. And if you're not getting results in some area, you have to move those resources somewhere else because you got a job to do, right? So, our hats off to DPP for trying. This Bill 89 we thought was going to be perfect. We thought it was going to do the trick. Then a federal judge came along and said, you can rent effectively saying you can rent 12 times a year for 30 days, and you can't force somebody to stay in the place for 30 days. So the industry kind of took that as saying it's okay to rent 12 times a year with these contracts, and then have an addended contract that actually gives you a daily rate and saying you can stay less than 30 days.
Well, let's get to some viewer questions here. This is from Chuck in Kailua, and this is a question for you. Enforcement of short-term rental zoning in residential and apartment areas has been largely ineffective. When can we expect increased enforcement by DPP? A lot of people felt like the last bill was a good one. We just didn't have the boots on the ground to actually make it work.
Correct. I think the Bill 89 provided, the council provided like 7 positions to DPP. Unfortunately, it was never funded. So part of the Bill 41, what we tried to do is set up a dedicated funding source that goes straight to fund our enforcement branch. We're going to stand up a new short-term vacation rental enforcement branch in DPP, specifically to regulate and manage the short-term vacation rentals. Unfortunately, recently, Corporation Counsel and Budget and Fiscal Service has told us that we cannot divert real property tax revenues into this special fund. So we're going to need a charter amendment to create that ability to dedicate real property tax into the special fund. The idea was to take the difference between what they're paying now, the residential, and the B&B or hotel rate, and we projected that to be about $3.1 million, and basically use that to fund as a dedicated funding source the enforcement branch. And then we would bring in, right now we have building inspectors doing the inspections and investigations, and the job is really to check for code compliance on building permits, right? So they're kind of out of their league to conduct investigations into this kind of sophisticated short-term vacation rental business. So what I want to do is the 7 positions, I want them to be investigators as opposed to building inspectors, and have some investigative experience so that we can come up with ways of going after the illegal vacation rentals.
So Larry just said that there's an estimated 10,000, I believe is what the estimate was. So 7 people to crack down on 10,000. It sounds like a pretty tough battle.
Well, I think the biggest tool we have is using the platforms and going after advertisements. If they cannot advertise, they cannot get business. So I think one of the strongest point of Bill 89 was to go and sweep the websites and pick up all the illegal advertising, and then get the cooperation of the websites to delist these people, right, because they are illegal. So we hope to continue that process, make it a little bit easier to manage. We've met with a few third-party providers, and there's a couple companies that provide these services across the United States. And they did just a sweep on Oʻahu, and they came up with like 14,000 advertisements, right? And this was just after like a week of us talking to them. They sweep like 80 different platforms at one time with the software they have. So we're going to be engaging with different outside third-party providers to assist us in the enforcement side.
And what's the penalty?
I think it varies. If they take the thing down, I don't think there's a fine. I think if they continue doing it, we start the daily fine of I think we're increasing it to like $25,000 a day.
$25,000 a day?
Yeah.
Wow, Kelly, that certainly is a deterrent. I want to ask Brandon this question. This is from Mike over email. Why is this bill so heavily in favor of the hotel industry? Specifically, why would the city try to put legal vacation rentals out of business by charging us a draconian $5,000 registration fee and then $2,000 per year thereafter? If legal vacation rental owners are burdened with this fee, why aren't hotels being charged for this? For each hotel room they rent. So I want to get to you in just a second, but Kelly, let's start with you. What can you tell us about that?
About the whole
About the fees and what Mike is saying in this email.
The fees are high, and just doing my own research as a realtor, I prefer facts, so I want to look it up and what are the numbers going to be. So I took a unit. The cost $200,000, right? So the owner's going to spend $200,000 or $100,000 down and get a mortgage for the other $100,000. When it goes into the hotel pool, this is how it works. You get all your income. So if you have a unit that's going for $200 a day and the income is $6,000, right off the top you take off your GE and your TAT. So that's gross. You don't take off expenses, that's off the top. After that, the hotel takes half. So now you're at 3,000, right? So you're at 3 if you bought it cash. And then you got the hotel fee and the fees. So at the end of it, after you pay your maintenance fee and your taxes and all that. So I did just one calculation on one unit, and if you bought it cash, your income would be $1,700. That's not getting rich. So I can see how someone who worked and saved to buy a unit, well, the person or the one that gets the most money is a hotel, right? Because the state gets their 15%, and the hotel gets half. Then everything else is, and then the owner gets theirs. So I understand why they would be saying, well, why does a hotel get half of the income? I bought it. I have to pay all the expenses, but then they get half. So, and then, if you're making $1,700 and you got to pay $5,000 a month, or $5,000 for the permit, and then $2,500 a year, well, then it becomes very unattractive as an investment. And a lot of people it's just a little bit of an extra income. They're not making tens of thousands of dollars a month or $25,000 on a unit. So that's excessive to anybody who owns it. And if the hotel owns it, well, then those people, or the hotel runs it, then that owner could pay a local property manager maybe 10%, 15% instead of half. But with this, they might not have a choice.
Brandon, talk about a little bit about this fee structure. I mean, what will this do to people who are doing this legally?
Yeah, so I want to get back to Director Uchida's question on the enforcement side. I do think that's a critical component. At that time, I was on the council when we did pass Bill 89. We did look at funding the positions, but because of the COVID time, the economy being tight, there was a 10% cut that we just had to operate on bare bones. So I think that's a critical component in how we get funded for inspectors that would go out for these illegal vacation rentals. In terms of the fees, initially when we were considering Bill 89, which is now Ordinance 1918, I've seen fees that were very high, back and forth in discussion, and we've arrived at these fees at where we are now. And I believe in Bill 41 and what's proposed, as Director Uchida says, 25,000 daily fines all the way up to 100,000. So I really do think we need to take a closer look, perhaps maybe looking at a different set of amount on those particular fines. But of course, that's open to discussion on that.
Okay. Larry, I just want to know if you could give us a little bit of a sense on the impact of the neighborhoods. We're talking a lot about the impact on the people who own these units, but what about the impact on the neighborhoods that this is having right now?
If I could first, just for a second, respond to Kelly's statement that about these legal operations. There are actually very few legal operations. There are about 800 with non-conforming use certificates remaining out of the 2,100 that started in 1990, and so they're mostly illegal operators. Now, there's this in this law will be the 180 days. So between 30 and 180, those people are currently legal, and they will be impacted by that. And so that's one reason Sable Oahu's neighborhoods and other groups have come to the conclusion that this bill needs to be split up, and a lot of the hotel regulation stuff be separated out into another bill, because they really aren't the same thing about the enforcement, which we want, and how do you regulate and enforce these operators into hotel pools and so forth. And there's a lot of things in the bill which are like rezoning or changing the land use for Waikiki Mauka. There's 15,000 residents living there, and there's suddenly hotel is a legitimate use in all these condominium buildings. So that has nothing to do with our issue of enforcement against vacation rentals. So we're going to be looking, hopefully, to get a sympathetic ear on the council to split this into more than one bill and deal with these issues separately, because they're not really related. But if you repeat the question again about how it affects the neighborhoods.
When Airbnb and these other operators came into Hawaii, the pitch to our community was, you own a home, Tutu wants to keep her home, she's got a spare bedroom, just let her rent it out. How has that actually played out?
Well, that's what I said in the beginning. Of the 10,000 plus, 70% are not local owners. They are foreign investors, mainland investors, Canadian, et cetera. So tutu is, they're hiding behind tutu skirts, actually, is the way I like to put it, because yes, there are some people out there who would suffer if they were enforced against, who are currently, or for the last few years, have operated illegally, but under the radar and haven't bothered their neighbors and so forth. And they are sympathetic characters, but they are the vast minority in this whole issue. They're an extremely small number in this whole issue. That would be my
Kelly,
response to that.
is that true? Do you agree with that?
No. I mean, partially, he has some good points about, Waikiki is different from the North Shore or Kaneohe or Waimanalo. It's not the same community, so using the same rules for this community and one that's out in the country is, it's a different situation. Do I think tutu renting out a room is something that can happen and does happen? Yeah, it does, because growing up here, the dream of owning a home was, I didn't own a home that I lived in until I was 47. It took me that long to be able to, get a home that I could live in. And almost always, I would suggest if you can have a little bit of a rental, that would help. If you lose your job or you get sick, or anything could happen. But having that Ohana unit or having the ADU or something that can bring you in some income during that time is relevant, and we recommend it often just because prices.
But those are legal now. You could rent a room. You can rent up to 5 rooms in your house to people for more than 30 days. That's legal. That's going to change the 180-day rule, which I think is going to require exceptions and exemptions and so forth.
Brandon,
I'd just like to add into this conversation. I think it's, good to hear, both sides of that. But how we got into all this is go back to public policy land use ordinance. When we looked at our land use ordinance, and we talked about the general plan today, we looked at, okay, where do we build resorts? Where do we build residential communities? Where do we build apartments? Where do we build agriculture? Now we have transit-oriented development, mixed use, mixed rental with rail. So we have to remind ourselves and go back to land use policy at its simplest form. And with sort of the advent of Airbnb, TVUs, Expedia, all these hosting sites, it's really changed the game on how people rent. So you add that to the mix. Now when you have neighbors hearing people come to their bedroom homes that they're not used to for many years, that their longtime local family Kama'aina residents, it kind of changes things. So we have to remind ourselves of that, and as a policymaker, as an elected official, we have to take into account all viewpoints, but at the same time, it all goes back to land use. What is the intent of the land use? And we also look at what is the highest and best use of that particular land use issue.
I want to bring in these two questions. Dean, these are for you. One says that a legal vacation renter wants to know what mechanism there is for collecting fines from the illegal renters. She also says that zoning officers are not allowed to go on a property without permission. She wants to know why there are laws if they can't be enforced. And then Mike from Makiki has a similar question, which is, who do I call if I suspect there's an illegal vacation rental in my neighborhood? It'll be some time before this actually comes to pass, and you hire those 7 people if you get the money together and all of that. In the meantime, what can people do?
They can call our office. We still investigate complaints about illegal vacation rentals. But like I said, it comes in as a regular complaint, and our building inspectors are the ones to go out and investigate. A lot of the problems is what she pointed out. We don't have police powers to go on the property. If the owners don't cooperate and we kind of get evidence about the illegal rental periods, a lot of our investigations stop because we don't get cooperation from the tenants or the owner of the property. Well, I'd like to go back to that question about the resort and the hotel. I think I'll be the first to admit the bill is imperfect. When we drafted the bill, we tried to address a lot of different issues. And Waikiki is very complex because you're dealing with 4 different zoning districts in Waikiki alone. And so coming up with a policy that basically addresses all the illegal rentals in those 4 districts was very difficult to do. So right now, I'm trying to work with council on coming up with language about how we can kind of section out the different zoning districts and then figure out what we're going to do in each one. The resort area where they were legally permitted, I think we're just going to allow them to continue. That hotel thing was basically for hotels that TVRs that are going to convert to hotel. But for the legal ones that are permitted in the resort zone district, we're probably just going to allow them to continue, or I would suggest that, and basically just have them register, pay the annual fee, the renewal fee, and then pay the GET and the TAT. And then also make sure that they're paying the higher real property tax. On the apartment precinct, apartment mixed-use precinct, and a Diamond Head special district, I think we got to treat them a little bit differently because those were actually set up for long-term residential uses. And so how we treat, if we're going to allow short-term rentals in those areas, that's a question that we have to discuss with council on. So we are trying to listen to the comments that are coming in. Throughout the whole planning commission process, I kept revising the bill, because we knew when we first submitted it wasn't perfect. We created these exemptions for the 180 period, and people brought up legitimate concerns about students, about gig workers, about healthcare workers coming in to help. So we started creating these exemptions, which I think Maui County does right now. And so we're listening to the comments from the public, and we're trying to adjust the bill to basically take care of the legitimate concerns that are being raised.
Well, Kelly, what about that, to address these concerns? I think that Larry speaks for a lot of people in the community who say that I don't want rental cars on my street. I don't want parties around my neighborhood. I want my kids to be able to ride their bikes and to see people that they actually know. So these are stories that we hear again and again. Is there a way to better balance this so that people can make income if they need it to pay a mortgage? Because we do know the cost of living here is high, while at the same time maintaining the integrity of our neighborhoods.
We do definitely support enforcement. We want I think the majority want to be legal, and they want enforcement. They don't, they're not trying to. I would think a majority are trying to earn a living, and want enforcement, and they want to be held accountable. I don't, if you're from here, you want your neighbor to be able to rent if they need to, and nobody, local or visitor, wants big loud parties. But is that the majority of them? Probably not. So I think most people want to do the right thing. They want to be legal. They want enforcement. They want an avenue to become legal if they're not. So I think that is something that most people want. I don't think it's most want to skirt the law and get away with something. They want to be legal, and they want to be accountable, and they want to pay their taxes and do the right thing and earn income. As far as tourism and noise in neighborhoods and cars, unfortunately we live in one of the most beautiful places on earth. Everybody wants to be here, and if we didn't live here, we would want to live here. If we go to the mainland and we say we're from Hawaii, why'd you ever leave? I would never leave. So they want to come here, and they're going to come, and we do need tourism. I mean, it is a backbone of our economy. And our beaches and our neighborhoods, with the world changing and developing, if you visit a place, you want to drive around and you want to see different spots of the island. You want to visit different beaches. You're not going to stay in one place. And if they don't drive there, they're going to catch a bus there. So they are in our neighborhoods, and they always have been. And when I was growing up, where we grew up, it was all cane fields, right? So all Kapolei wasn't there, Kunia wasn't there, Waikele wasn't there, Ko'olina wasn't there, Everett Gentry, all those places that didn't exist. That was all cane fields. We played in the cane fields and went to the beaches. Well, Kapolei turned from cane fields into residential. Right, so it did have to develop, and we're glad that it did, because it created jobs and housing that we needed out there. And then now there's some hotels out there, right? So that it changed again, and we began developing, and now, my parents, we used to have to drive to Pearl City to go to a restaurant. We had a drive-in Waipahu back then. So it does change, but pretending that it's not, and that we can just stop tourism from coming or going to neighborhoods. I mean, we don't own the beaches, and if I was a tourist, I would want to visit different neighborhoods and eat at different restaurants and support those local businesses. And I think we all want that.
Larry, I
have
want
a
to get your
second
take.
respond to that?
Of course, and I also want you to respond to Alan's question from the North Shore, which kind of ties in, which he says, why not regulate it to the point where only people who live on the property can rent out rooms instead of a blanket cancellation on all rentals?
That was the B&B law that's in Ordinance 1918. And I guess they've decided that actually never got implemented, but that was part of the B&B law that, was going to be a resident living there with them, et cetera, right? And I can't explain why that was never instituted, but we delayed it for a while, a couple times, primarily because we have insisted ever since we formed up a long time ago, 15 years ago, we want to see effective enforcement before any permitting is allowed, and it hasn't happened. Now, there have been a couple instances back in maybe 2015 or 16. Kaika Anderson, council member at the time, got $300,000 put into the DPP budget to hire retired DPP workers to go out and enforce. We saw the market shrink immediately. So there was an impact. And then for some reason, the administration pulled that money out. And then when this law passed, 1918, we saw the market shrink dramatically. Now they found they can get away with it, so they're back. So I hope that answers your question about that. But the what Kelly said about tourism is our backbone, agreed. But if you look at the numbers, 1989, and I'm going to quote a speech put on the Senate floor about a year ago. 1989, we had 6 million tourists who spent a certain amount of money. 2017, we had 9 million tourists who spent less money in real dollars than the 6 billion did in 1989. And that's because they're staying in vacation rentals. They're cheap tourists. They come the first time, they buy a lot of stuff, then they come back next year. Next year, they go to Costco. They shop at Costco. They're not going to expensive restaurants. They're cheap tourists. So if we're going to run this industry or have this industry for the benefit of the people who live here to some degree, we have to say selectively, we want tourists who are going to leave money behind and not impact our neighborhoods so much. And typically, those tourists stay in hotels.
I want to read two comments here, and Brandon, get your thoughts on what they have to say. Mike says, legal rentals in the hotel resort area are already paying those high property tax rates. Why are you forcing people with a condotel to use their services? This screams out preference for hotels by eliminating competition with individuals. On the other side, this person writes, illegal vacation rentals are not a victimless crime. It's been heartbreaking to see our coastal rural communities being ripped apart for over-tourism and the greed of a few. Why are the effects on our rural community and working families not being addressed? So what are you hearing from the constituents in your area? And when I think of the neighborhoods that you represent, they are certainly not tourism areas traditionally.
Yes, that is correct. They're more bedroom communities, multifamily dwelling units. I also have some apartment areas in the Aiea Pro City area, and also walk-up housing. So it's two opposite ends on that question. So I'll address the most recent one. It has impacted rural communities, and I think as Larry has mentioned, when we saw that Ordinance 1918 took in effect, anecdotally, we did see that the number of illegal rentals did go down. And I even heard personal stories where people were able to purchase homes because now that adds to the market that may have been rented illegally per se. On the other hand, for the hotel and being charged that, that's the proposal in Bill 41, which would go up for TVUs to the hotel rate, which I believe is at $13.90 per thousand assessed value. And then the city council did also put in the bed and breakfast rate, which is at $6.50. So that's there. However, it hasn't been enforced. And to Larry's point, in 1918, one of the compromise at the council was to create a little wiggle room, especially for the bed and breakfast, to have a host operator. And hearing from what Director Uchida has mentioned and what the Planning Commission has gone through, we didn't sort of open the floodgates for that. So we are where we are now, and in its current form, it would ultimately shut down the 0.5% in the development plans for bed and breakfast hosts.
Okay, and on that bed and breakfast host question, this person says, many of the statements are egregious. Bed and breakfasts are like in-laws where an owner is on-site living and can regulate the noise, etc. And this is what Larry was talking about. This isn't off-island investments. It's about local families finding ways to get by. Is there a place for that kind of a business?
I think there is, but I think what we've seen is that as these vacation rentals become profitable, people go out and buy houses in that community, and you have different landowners, basically doing short-term vacation rentals. I'd like to just clarify some stuff. Larry mentioned the 800 non-conforming uses that are legal right now, right? Of that 800, only about 115 are in the residential zone communities. So the rest of them are in the resort or apartment kind of thing. And that's what we're going to limit them to going forward. So you're going to have 115 legal B&Bs or short-term vacation rentals in residential communities. I think COVID, was a wake-up call, not only from the impact that it had on neighborhoods, but also the residents. We began to see what Hawaii is like with no tourism, right? You can go to Waikiki Beach, no crowd, right? So I think the HTA picked that up and came up with their management plan about trying to control the numbers. I think 7 million, 8 million that Larry mentioned before. I mean, people were okay with that. When it reached 10 million a couple years ago, I think a lot of people weren't comfortable with that. So you can view this as another means of managing the tourist numbers that are coming to Hawaii. I think that there was an article about HTA mentioning there wasn't any hotel construction from 2009 till recently, but yet the tourist numbers have gone up like 3 million over that same period. So that people had to go somewhere. If you don't have new hotel rooms, they're staying in the illegal rentals, right?
There are a number of calls, and I want to give you an opportunity to address this, about a potential conflict of interest, given that your wife is an executive at Aqua Aston. Too many for me to even get to read all of them, but I do want to give you an opportunity to address that.
There's no conflict. My wife didn't have anything to do with the legislation. I worked with the Blangiardi administration. We came up with this thing on our own.
What about this idea that it is too much of an impact? I know you said that sort of this, we have to just live with it. Is there, what Larry was saying about the high spend tourist, that we want to have people who leave money on the table and don't shop at Costco? Is that just, are we too late for that, essentially? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the city is doing its best to regulate it and try and get it under control. And maybe COVID did give us a little time to hit the pause button and say, okay, how are we going to manage this? Because the tourists are going to come back and everybody's going to want to travel. So it's gonna be something that we're going to have to manage. I am not comfortable judging someone by their ability to eat at an expensive restaurant, because honestly, I have 2 kids, and when I travel, they have specific diets, and I need to go to Costco and get them what they need, because you have 2 toddlers in a hotel room for 7 days. That is quite the activity. So I wouldn't want to say because somebody doesn't have enough money that they shouldn't come here. I wouldn't want to say that. I'm not sure if a vacation rental is much cheaper than a hotel, but I think if they are staying in a vacation rental, they are going to be going to local stores and gas stations and mini marts, and they're going to be shopping at our local industry places. And I think a lot of what I've heard is we want to keep the money here. Whatever we decide to do, we want to keep it here. So we want local businesses to benefit. We want the local restaurants and the local vendors and tour companies and dive instructors and surf instructors. They all depend on this industry. So managing it is extremely important. But what I want to tell someone, you're on a budget, don't come? No, I can't say that I would do that. I would want to find a way for as many people as possible to at least visit at one point in their life, because I would.
Brandon, what do you think about that? There is this call to have fewer tourists but higher spend, to turn us more into, I don't know, French Polynesia or a place where it's really expensive to go. You maybe go once in a lifetime, as opposed to being, a lot of the visitors that we saw over the summer, I think that people were sort of shocked by the rush of tourists, and there were a lot of first-time visitors, and there was a lot of tension between Kama'aina and tourists in a way that we haven't seen before. And part of it is that break that Dean's talking about, that we had this, total quiet, and then all of a sudden the roar came back, and it came back pretty strongly. Is the goal of a measure like this to force out those lower spend tourists so that we just cultivate the higher spend?
I wouldn't say that, because people always have options and they can choose. And it's a choice, right? And you choose into that responsibility in terms of the decision you make. The managed tourism that HTA Hawaii Tourism Authority has put forward in looking at the type of tourists that we have there, you're not able to control that. But I think what we saw with COVID is Japan, Australia, Canada, where we get most of sort of the high-end visitors that come here, they were shut down, just like how we were as well. And what we saw was more people, domestic travelers from the U.S. mainland, coming to travel here and spend their dollars. And what we recognize and what we realize, yes, while it was great to be around and experience our own island home without having tourists, and that we can enjoy Waikiki or all these areas, what we also did recognize is I also represent a group of constituents, who work in the hotel industry as well, or are service workers, or who have multiple jobs. And when it came down to seeing them come in line to get food, it, to me, broke my heart. It was just so devastating just to see that on little means that, and what I recognize from that is that their livelihoods depend on the service industry. And so we need some form of tourism. And we're slowly getting back. I mean, who doesn't want to come here to Hawaii, right? And as Kelly mentioned earlier, why would you leave Hawaii, right? It's such a beautiful island home. Yet it's become so expensive over the years. So a legislation like Bill 41, can have some ripple effects and different effects, but I do believe that people are given the option of choice as to where they want to reside. But I think we also have to look at it from a land use policy of what is appropriate in neighborhoods.
And to that question, Larry, if you would address this, shouldn't there be an exemption for beachfront houses used chiefly for rentals? These are not affordable to residents and would not drive up property values. Should there be additional exemptions for certain?
No, we looked into that years ago. And Oahu is one housing market, period. So you take let's say a beachfront house that might rent for $10,000 a month. You take that off the market. That $10,000 is going to move 2 blocks in and pay $9,500 for a place that used to rent for $9,000. And you're going to go through the whole housing market that way. And it won't happen instantly, but it'll take some time. And on the bottom end, somebody ends up with no house. So we have a lot of people with no houses here. And, that's our biggest issue is housing and the availability of housing and so forth, and the impact this has on the housing availability. And a house on the beach, it holds people. A house, in Manoa holds people. So you take one out, somebody's without a house.
Well, and to the housing impact, I want to drill down on the numbers that you gave us. I believe, and you probably all know better than I, that we're short, I think it's 60,000 units, I think is what we need in Hawaii, on Oahu. And Brandon, you can tell me, or maybe Dean, you can tell me if I'm wrong.
It's 25,000 on Oahu.
25,000 on Oahu.
60 statewide.
60 statewide. Okay, so yeah. I knew I was close on the numbers, but not quite. So let's just take Oahu, 25,000 units. Does this what kind of an impact will this actually have?
We have an answer for that. We have a very good answer for that. The city is now considering getting back into building housing or low-income housing or housing projects and so forth. So if you take the price of 1 or 2 homes, let's say $1.5 million, $2 million, and put it into the DPP for enforcement, and you knock off half of those 10,000 homes that are currently being used illegally for vacation rentals, you've just acquired $3.5 billion worth of housing sitting there right now, ready to go. The city doesn't have to build another thing. So why are we going to tax people to build more housing so that this industry can thrive, on the housing they've taken out of the marketplace? It's just not fair. So why tax everybody for what can be returned to the housing market It's already built. It's ready to go. And this is what happened when 1918 passed. We saw houses going off the rental market, or off the short-term rental market, and back into housing. And people actually sold some of them to people who live here. So we know what the impact will be.
Okay.
And that's much cheaper than building new buildings and housing projects,
And Dean, a lifelong resident wants to know why people who live in their houses can't rent out rooms for less than 6 months, especially in areas where there isn't heavy tourism or complaints from neighbors.
We're going to allow that in the bill. We're allowing, we wanted to basically stop the tourist rentals of, less than 180 days. But we heard what was said at the Planning Commission, and we're making exemptions for less than 180 days for these types of legitimate short-term rentals for non-tourist related activities.
And Kelly, do you think those exemptions will be adequate?
I think they could be. They could be helpful. There's a bit of a concern about putting more work on the department for regulating that and having to go through the paperwork, and how is that going to work in real time, and how many people are going to need to be on staff to address all those exemptions. And as far as the shortage of housing, we've had a shortage for, when I started in real estate almost 20 years ago, we were talking about the shortages. And the city has done quite a bit during that time and built more affordable housing across the island, in Ward and on Kapolei, on the west side. But if you take there's a concern I have when you say, like Larry said, well, if there's a vacation rental and then that's, taken off the market, that's housing. Well, if that's a $2 million house in Kailua, that's not going to be affordable housing. Someone else is going to come buy that. And one thing that I found interesting is we thought it was tourism affecting the vacation rentals. And when COVID happened, we thought, well, prices are going to go down. All those illegal vacation rentals are going to have to sell. They can't be vacant for 2 years. So we should see some prices adjusting. And we saw the exact opposite. They went through the roof, which, much faster. We knew the median was going to get to $1 million, but we didn't expect it for another 4 or 5 years. So does that equate, this vacation rental that turns into an affordable house? Maybe not.
Okay, Larry, what do you think about that?
The houses, we're in a tight market. We're not Omaha. We can't just chop up another cornfield and put in another neighborhood, right? We've got an ocean around us. So unless we want to put more density in where we are, we have the housing market we have. And so you take one house off that market, you take 10,000 houses out of that market, you affect the price of everything else. It's like the stock market. It isn't what somebody's real estate is really worth, it's what it sold for yesterday. And this is the same thing as rents. Rents go up on the margin. So, rent adjustment comes every year under a rental agreement or whatever, and they look and see what everybody else is getting, and they'll charge maybe 1% or 2% below that, but it'll go up, and it's based on what is the norm, or what they can get.
Brandon, there's a direct question to you from Bill and Kali. He says, the bill passed your committee first reading. Are you in favor of this bill as is? Do you think it's fair?
So right now, we approve the extension of time. I'm not committing to anything at this point because we have to hear from all sides, but also take a deep dive and do our homework from the council's perspective to see what can be added, what can be deleted from that bill before moving forward. So I don't have a position at this point in time.
Okay. Larry, I want you to answer this question a viewer emailed to us. We purchased a Waikiki Sunset condo unit in 2007 with the intent of using it 3 to 6 months per year as a second vacation home after our retirement. If the city forces owners to transfer ownership of private property to the hotel monopoly industry, is this not government expropriation of private property without entitlement to compensation? What do you say to this?
I'll answer that by saying, Save Oahu's neighborhoods, we've had meetings about this with other groups and so forth. And we really want to separate that part of the bill out as stand on its own. In other words, we want enforcement all these zoning changes and so forth and hotel requirements in Waikiki, we don't have a big opinion on.
Okay.
So I can't say it's fair or not fair, or it's expropriation of property. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but we'd really like to see that stuff separated out and make this bill about housing and enforcement and so forth. So rather than what's happening with hotel operations in Waikiki.
Okay. John from Hawaii Kai asks, who is making sure vacation renters are paying the appropriate taxes, and how much money is being lost by those who don't pay? It's interesting, anecdotally, we actually hear about people who are renting their homes and collecting GET and actually paying them even though they are doing so, renting their homes illegally. There are these weird tax situations with this.
Yeah, well, we hope if Bill 41 passes, at least from the making the legal operators register, the registration process will ensure that they're paying the real property tax, they're paying the GET, and they're paying the TAT.
Okay. We have just 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure that I give each of you an opportunity to share a final word with us. Brandon, I want to start with you. There's a lot of conflict here. I don't know that we have any kind of consensus on this just yet. What would you say to folks who are watching tonight?
I would say to folks watching tonight, really tune in, participate. This is a democratic process, and this is a priority for the administration. I know that, and we've been here before. The last bill, 89, which became 1918, took almost 2 years to pass, which was decades old of really looking at an issue that saw a ballooning effect of illegal vacation rentals. So, there will be opportunities in public hearings, at least 5, if the bill were to further move along, for the public to comment, whether you're for and against, if you have thoughts or feedback. And, I think this is a start to this forum of where we are now and seeing how we can collaborate. Not everyone's going to want everything or be pleased with the outcome, but at the end of the day, that's part of our democratic process.
Okay. Callie, so many folks are frustrated with having all these tourists back at the same time and felt a little, overwhelmed. What do you say to them? Because a lot of those folks, I think, are in favor of this kind of legislation.
I have to support my local businesses, and they, like Brandon said, they were out of work. So getting back to work in the tourist industry is important for people in neighborhoods, in our local community. A lot of us are dependent on some form of tourism to survive, so we can't do without it. And it was nice to go to the beach a few times, and I'd never seen that in my life before. And I was raised here, my whole life, and never did I experience that. And it was interesting, but I still had this feeling of so many people are out of work. And how do we justify? Would I like to? Sure. But the money, the money is necessary, so we do need that. And on Brandon's point about Bill 89, the thing that I want people to take away is that took over 2 years. And the good thing about it was nobody left happy. No one party left 100% happy. Everybody had to give a little. So that was a democratic process. It was a fair, very drawn out, there's a lot of emotions involved. So if I could say anything, we want the regulation, we want to be fair and equitable. And everybody's going to have to give a little. No one gets to walk away getting all their wishes. And if we do that, then that's democracy at work.
Larry?
Yeah, it's housing, and neighborhood life. And I'd like to say something about what Mr. Uchida said in his opening statement about the type of enforcement. We've long advocated that within the DPP should be a land use enforcement officer trained not in fixed violations like walls and signs, but trained in enforcement of the land use laws, because it's called the land use ordinance, not the building ordinance. And it means we need, a lot of jurisdictions have an office called the land use enforcement officer, and they have special powers and so forth, and they have different training. So they're trained in the law. Planners are great people, but they just don't look that tough. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So But it's really about housing, and neighborhood life.
Okay, I want to give you the last word. Is this the thing that is finally going to solve this issue?
Well, I agree with what Councilmember Elefante said. This is a process that we're just starting right now. And it's kind of like somebody described it to me, legislation is like making sausage. You just throw all kind of stuff in and then you kind of work it through and then you'd be surprised at what comes out at the end. I just want the public to understand that we are listening to everybody. We're trying to make reasonable adjustments to the bill as it moves through. We're looking for solutions that will be fair and equitable to a lot of people. So just like Councilmember Elefante said, participate in the process and then help us craft a bill that everybody will be maybe not happy with, but satisfied with.
Okay, well, we're looking forward to seeing what the final meal is from this sausage process. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for being here tonight. Of course, we do thank our guests, the Director of the City's Department of Planning and Permitting, Dean Uchida, Kelly Lee from the Oʻahu Short-Term Rental Alliance, Honolulu City Council member Brandon Elefante, and Larry Bartley from the group Save Oahu's Neighborhoods. We are off next week for Thanksgiving. We hope you have a happy holiday, but Insights will be back on December 2nd. Our panel that night will take on another issue that the City and County of Honolulu is facing, how to better manage stormwater runoff. We'll discuss a new proposal that could result in additional fees for property owners. You'll want to see that one, so please do join us then. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.